Long-time elementary school teachers. Which of your former students surprised you the most by their adult life outcomes or personality? I taught in a low-income, high immigrant community for my entire career. I loved where I taught and still have tremendous fondness and admiration for the community, as powerfully challenging as it was to teach a population with such limited resources. I had a student in 3rd grade who was sweet, kind, and goofy, but the typical never do homework, mediocre to poor grades type at the time. When I moved up to teaching middle school and had him again in 6th grade, little had changed. I liked him as a person quite a lot, but academically and effort wise he was a solid MECT student. Fast forward a decade or so, I had to retire from the classroom early and a bit abruptly due to a health crisis, resulting brain surgery, and the aftermath. This devastated me. At the time, I posted about how much I missed teaching and my heartbreak over it on my Facebook page. This now adult student, who had added me as a friend, but rarely to never posted anything anywhere on FB, commented the most heartwarming words about what an inspiration I'd been, and how he felt I'd started him on the path that led him to a degree in chemical engineering from a major university. He was the first in his family to go to college, nonetheless earn a degree. His kind and generous words made me weep, and his academic success left me stunned. If you had asked me back when he was in 3rd or 6th grade which student would be the one to earn a degree in engineering, I think I would have gone through 2, 3 of the class before I'd have even thought of him. Edit 1. Holy wow. I typed this up just before turning the light off in bed and woke up to so many comments and awards and support. Thank you guys. All of you. Probably because I'd recalled this memory just before going to sleep. I had a rather vivid, somewhat desperate dream about teaching and being back in that community with all of my current health issues. I was trying so hard and found myself literally lost in the town, using my broken Spanish to try and find my way and encountering former and current students who helped me along. It's been 2 years since I was last in the classroom, and I've gone through a lengthy and painful grieving process. But in the last couple of years I've found acceptance, if not peace, with what I cannot and could not control. But man, I loved what I did, and I loved every one of those kiddos. Every one. That took some effort for some of them, but I made a point to find a way. I always told them on the last day of school, you were my students for a year, but you are my kids forever. Thank you again, everyone, for your kind words and awards. I had a student that used to get into fights and was extremely aggressive and violent towards others. On the last day of 5th grade, his last words to me and his class were "duck you." Many years later he came back to the school I'd been teaching at and looked for me so he could give me a big hug and apologize. In his words, "I was garbage when I was here. Thank you for putting up with me, and I'm sorry." I cried like a baby. I was so proud of him. The student whose social skills were non-existent and whose academics were equally as troubling is in college taking nuclear physics. I swear he was easily like 3 grades behind when I knew him in primary junior grades Canada. I'm not one of these great success stories, but I'm back home visiting and actually ran into my 3rd grade teacher at Starbucks. I was working on my laptop WFH, but my parents' Wi-Fi is crap, so I work at Starbucks when I visit. I saw her sit down and it just kept bugging me why she looked so familiar, because I swear when I was in 3rd grade I thought she was at least in her 50s, so she would have to be like in her late 70s now or something like that. Chalk it up to a child's memory. Anyway, when I noticed she was getting ready to leave, I asked if she was Ms. 3rd grade and she said yes with a kind of confused tone, and I explained who I was and that she had been my teacher. She was so excited to see a former student and kept thanking me for taking a chance and saying hi to her, and that she wished more students would do that because she loves getting to hear about her former students' lives. So I guess if you are on the other side of this question and you see a former teacher, don't be afraid to reach out and just say hi, explain who you are, and just thank them for their role in your education. She remembered me as the little girl obsessed with acting and reading. Still true today. I started in elementary school. One of my first students I had when she was in 3rd grade Her father was abusive when she was younger and mom left him and was raising her on her own. But her mom was also heavily involved in gangs. She was very behind compared to the rest of the kids, but she was always very helpful to the other children, me, and the staff. I had a soft spot for her, and she ended up being one of my favorites. Teachers will often say they don't have favorites, but that's a lie. A couple years later I was moved to 5th grade, and I had her again. She was struggling a lot by this time, but still, I never gave up on her, and she never gave up either. Later, when she was in 8th grade, I was moved to middle school, and once again, I had her again. By this time her mom's lifestyle had had an influence. She always wore red, threw up gang signs, and used to get into a lot of fights at school. One thing that was different was she had caught up academically with the rest of her peers, and actually even surpassed many of them. She used to come by after school and started seeing me as a mentor, and we had a connection, as I too was heavily involved with gangs in my teens and early 20s. When she moved on to high school, she kept in touch. Her high school was across the street and she used to come by after school all the time to check in. She eventually got involved in student body, became the senior class president, and was on the honor roll all 4 years. She got accepted into all 8 colleges she applied for. She is currently on a full ride scholarship at Stanford University and plans to continue with graduate school. She is very involved with the community too. She is currently a waitress, but is planning on doing big things. I'm so proud of her. I guess my mom might count, since she's worked at the elementary school I attended since 1993. But she recently told me about one of my elementary school classmates. I was actually pretty good friends with him, but I thought he was a bit slow. And apparently, he had been evaluated for learning disorders several times in early grade school. He apparently just started a surgery fellowship at a prestigious hospital in Philadelphia. He definitely worked very hard in grade school and middle school. And now that I look back, he definitely sought out the smart kids in class and tried to befriend them and see how they thought. Not me, but know a guy. Lovely quiet chap who lived to draw. Teacher said his work was no good. Went on to be a senior effects artist and later works for a major computer games company and can of course draw. Was connected on social media with a former grad school teacher who shared a news article about a former student who got arrested for selling meth with an estimated worth of $500,000. Ps. The teacher is now a high school teacher, good at math and measurements. Not me, but a kid who used to be my friend. He was studios. He got good grades. Teachers loved him. He was well behaved. He wasn't bullied. He didn't bully other kids. He had a lot of friends. He wasn't popular, but he wasn't unpopular. He was definitely more popular than me though. No one had a problem with him. Since he got good grades, his parents let him do whatever he wanted. They bought him whatever he wanted. He had the latest video games and consoles as they came out. We loved sleeping over his house because we could stay up all night, jump on the trampoline at 2 in the morning, and we didn't even have to sneak out for mischief. We could just walk out the door. Anyways, he moved in 8th grade. I was sad. A couple years back someone sends me a Facebook message of a local article. This guy stabbed someone 23 times and is awaiting a murder trial. I have no clue where his life took a hard left turn, but it did clearly. My brother was tutored by an elementary school teacher, and he was a complete mess of a student as a kid. She was helping him transition from a top prep school to public school, because the preppy school didn't feel he would ever amount to much in their care. She tried several methods to keep him organized, and help his reading skills to no avail. She continuously checked in with his teacher, worked at the same school, to see his progress and constantly had to talk to him on behalf of the teacher. Everyone loved him. He was just an utter mess. We ran into her a year ago and got to tell her that he got a full ride to law school at an Ivy League school. Blew her mind. But proof that some kids thrive in different learning environment. Terrible through traditional school, but when he got to college, he thrived because of breaks between classes. Time to study. Picked his classes which were focused than trying to cover 1,000 topics in a year, and got to know his teachers. Thank goodness for my parents holding out hope all those years, haha. Not an elementary school teacher, but as a former child, I have something to say for Mr. Farley. Duck you, Mr. Farley, in good at drawing. Not a teacher, but my best friend in high school was the most picked on kid in a high school of 4,000 students. He definitely wasn't much of an academic and seemed destined for barely getting through life. He's now worked his way up in fast food, has franchised a couple Dairy Queens, and worked for Homeland Security in between. I teach English as a second language, and I had a kid who spoke Arabic who barely could master English in the beginning, to be expected of course. Well, 8 years later he's on his way to being an astrophysicist. He came to school to find me to tell me last year, and I've never had a prouder moment teaching. He told me I was the only one who believed in him. Edit wow. Thank you so much for the awards and sweet comments. They mean a lot to me after an exhausting year of remote and hybrid teaching. If you're thinking about reaching out to a teacher, totally do it. We've had a crazy year and I'd bet $1 million it would mean so much to them. And for all my ESL and multilingual kiddos in this thread, I'm so proud of you. I've been on our PTA for a long time. Does that count? There was a very skinny, quiet kid who was super smart. The other kids picked on him quite a lot, but he never stood up for himself. I always thought he would work for NASA or something as he was so smart. I saw his LinkedIn a few months ago, and he is now a prison officer at a maximum security prison. Not mine, but my mom's story. She used to teach the second grade and there was a kid who was ruthlessly bullied because he had another finger on his hand. He didn't come from a very good background and had to work jobs in the middle of school for his family. This is pretty common for low-income families in India. He was shouted at by the principal as he missed like half of the school, so my mom told him to come to our house so she could tutor him every few days. He's now studying mechanical engineering at IIT, very prestigious university in India, and reached to my mom on Facebook and thanked her. I had to be tutored for eating during elementary school. The same teacher came to my house after school a few times a week to help me. Years later, my mom ran into her, and she asked how I was doing. She was so incredibly happy and shocked to hear I was an English major applying to library science graduate programs. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe,